it's a solid video, we may just go ahead and save it, and I don't think it's anything too time dependent. So we'll stick with this for now, and then we'll get the games logged on. Ugh. So February 1st, 2025, Trump signs executive order to impose 10% tariffs on China, 25% tariffs on Mexico and Canada. So this is like early days. This is right when it first came on. People are still saying, I mean, I guess they're still saying to this day, but this is like early art of the deal stuff. You guys don't get it. He's bluffing, blah, 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 this stuff. February 3rd, Trump announces 30-day pause on 25% tariffs on Mexico and Canada, 10% tariffs on 10% tariffs on all Chinese imports come into effect on February 4th. So here we have all Chinese goods, 10% of them being tariffed. China responds by imposing 15% tariffs on U.S. coal and liquefied natural gas, LNG, and 10% tariffs on crude oil and agricultural machinery, large displacement cars, and pickup trucks, taking effect February 10th. On February 10th, those get into effect. You can kind of see how they've bracketed them out here. Sorry, I don't have it blown up, but I don't know if you can even blow it up. So same day, February 10th, Trump announces 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum imports from all countries. And I believe we get a decent amount of steel, and again, don't quote me on this, believe we get a decent amount of steel from China, so this affects them as well. On February 13th, Trump announces an investigation being undertaken by his administration to levy, quote, reciprocal, end quote, tariffs on other nations. On March 4th, Trump levies additional 10% tariff on China and 25% tariff on Mexican and Canadian imports with some exceptions. So you see we had tariffs before, and then they're adding additional tariffs now. So it went from 10% to 20%. So we have 20% of the Chinese goods tariffed here at March 4th. Same day, March 4th, China counters with 10 to 15% tariffs on U.S. agricultural products that take effect March 10th. We have crude oil, coal and liquid natural gas, and agricultural products. So you have all three of these sectors that you're seeing. March 12th, the U.S. 25% steel and aluminum tariffs take effect on all countries. China will pay more than 25% due to already existing tariffs on steel and aluminum, which will make this 45%. Trump announces on March 26th an additional 25% tariffs on automobiles. Oh, no, not an additional. 25% tariffs on automobiles taking effect April 3rd and auto parts no later than May 3rd. On April 2nd, Trump announces a package of so-called, quote, reciprocal, end quote, tariffs on dozens of nations, including China, which was set to see tariffs increase to 34%. Trump also announces a 10% tariff for all imports to the U.S., with exceptions for Mexico and Canada. If it seems like there's no plan or anything like that, that's what everybody else is worried about too, that they're just randomly bouncing around and there's no real goal here. For countries due to see, quote, reciprocal, end quote, tariffs imposed, the 10% universal rate will go into effect on April 5th and will be deducted from the reciprocal tariff rate set to go into effect April 9th. On April 3rd, you can see a picture of how it is here. So 20% of all Chinese goods, 25% of steel and aluminum, 25% on vehicles. Automobiles, I shouldn't say vehicles, sorry. April 4th. China announces a 34% tariff on U.S. goods effective April 10th. 34% on all U.S. goods. Boom. On April 5th, 10% universal tariffs go into effect, putting China's tariff rate at 30%. On April 7th, Trump counters China's retaliatory tariff, threatening a 50% tariff in addition to the full 34% reciprocal tariff if China did not back off. April 9th, Trump hits China with additional 84% levy across all imports, raising the total to 104%. China announces on April 9th retaliatory tariffs of 84% on imports of U.S. goods, further escalating the trade war between the world's two largest economies. And if I'm not wrong, right around here, I don't know if it's going to be listed here, so I'll just mention it because I think about it. I think this 84% number, basically China has said that this makes it that it's so expensive to do business that it won't work. They're not going to go up anymore because there's no Trump can choose a bigger number and go 200% tariffs, 400% tariffs, 800% tariffs. You can keep saying a bigger number, but at a certain point, people can't afford to do this, and it's cheaper to go elsewhere. And I think China has basically said that they've hit their number, and there's no point in going up for them. So they've arrived at a place, and it's crazy. They had a plan. It sounds, at least to me, like they had more of a plan than we did when it came to this, because they got to a number and they said, "Oh, we're done here, and then we're going to start going elsewhere." So it definitely does escalate the trade war, but not unnecessarily. You know, they didn't start this. I know the big thing now is you can't offend the Trump regime. You know, don't offend the Trumpers, because God forbid you offend them. The people who call everybody snowflakes are the people who are the biggest snowflakes. Don't you dare ever, question what they have to say. But it seems like, at least to me, outsider looking in, China at least has a plan going in. I'm not saying that all their data that we get from them is accurate, but at least when it comes to having a plan, it looks like they had more than us. Trump raises tariff to at least 145% on all Chinese imports effective immediately. So 145%, 25% on steel, 25% on automobiles. You can see how this is quite a thing. Trump announces on April 9th a 90-day pause on reciprocal tariffs for nations except for China. The 10% universal tariff, however, remains in effect. So 10%. This is what it is. Okay, it was the 125%. It wasn't the 84%. That's my fault. So this number here is everything I just said about China, how they're not going up. It was on April 11th. China increased the retaliatory tariffs on U.S. imports, and I'm glad I talked about it because they don't have anything about it here. China increases its retaliatory tariffs on U.S. imports to 125%. So these two major traders are not doing business, and then we have started essentially like a trade war sell-off, seeing who can get it, and then we're seeing things, ripple effects in the debt, we're seeing ripple effects in the bond market, and a bunch of stuff that I don't understand. The U.S. dollar fluctuating, which isn't necessarily bad, but it's again, all these things, if you have a plan, it's like the chainsaw thing that I say about tariffs. Tariffs, like a chainsaw, have a very specific purpose. They are a tool that can be used to help you quite a bit when nothing else can. There are there's a reason why we have a chainsaw. There's a reason why we made it. It's because it's so useful. There's a reason why we have tariffs. It's because it's useful. But if you use them in this way and you wave them around wildly and you attack your closest allies, but also your biggest trade partner, and spit in everyone's eye all at the same time, you can't reasonably expect no one to get hurt. That's just the simple, basic truth of life. I don't understand why you guys can be so, matter of fact about everything, but when it comes to this, you're blind as bats. All right,